you know. But here is the Tim Pool show. Tim Pool is also kind of a right wing. He says he's moderate, but he's not. He's a right wing nut job. And this is a what is this? No fault divorce has destroyed men's confidence in marriage. Men don't want to get married anymore because their wives could leave them whatever they want, I guess. That's the whole point of this discussion.
Wait, is that really, do we really think that's the reason why?
No.
I'm feeling like, I don't know, my theory is that people are not getting married as much because there's less of a sort of religious sort of push toward it. I mean, a lot more people are not identifying strongly with a particular, religious or morality reason. They feel the need to, so they're just going, do I care about this? I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of things. The other thing to remember too is getting married is expensive in most cases. And the other thing is, I mean, there's benefits, tax benefits and stuff depending on your situation if you're getting married. But the thing about it is a lot of people, it's like, I don't want to get married. I don't want to have kids. I just want to, we can just live together, date, whatever. I mean, it's just a different attitude. Now, I mean, it could be some of it's religious, some of it's cultural, a lot of it's financial, I would say too. If you don't feel like you're in a financial position to get married and have kids, right? Because there's also once you get married to somebody, things change. Like once you get engaged to somebody, the relationship changes, the dynamic changes, right? And things are more serious. So you have to, I just think it's just people are just different. Just less people just want to get married. Could be a lot of reasons. I'm not a sociologist. I don't know all the ins and outs, but
Well, I just know that once upon a time, further back in history, there was all of this push, based very much around religion, that was really the way that you had to do it. And
yeah,
people don't identify so much as being so strictly subscribed to these various religions anymore. Even people who identify as being a part of a particular religion maybe are less strict feeling about rules.
yeah. Plus, there was in the 50s and the 60s, and there was the idea of the nuclear family, right? Mom, dad, the kids, and that was everybody was you get a job, get married, have kids, get a house, get a car.
Right.
That's all kind of changed a little bit too. So I think there's some cultural shift, but religion could be part of it. But let's listen to them because they think it's the no fault divorce thing, which I think is ridiculous. Because first off, let's say you were talking to some guy who was 25 and was like he was like, well, I don't want to get married because of no fault divorce. It's like, how do you even know what that fucking is? Most people don't know what the difference is. I know because I used to do divorce law with my father. I used to help him with those cases, right? I know what that is. But how many people before we started this video knew what no fault and at fault divorce were? How many
I
people?
actually did.
Well, unless you know somebody who's been divorced,
Right.
people of our age have probably heard of it. But if you're in your 20s, you don't. That's not preventing you from getting married, right? Because nobody who's really keen on getting married is thinking, what if she divorces me 10 years from now?
That's true. If I were really excited about getting married, somebody is saying, but
But
you might get divorced or this, that, and the other
I don't know.
to things divorce related wouldn't be the thing that would make me not do it.
Yeah, at that point you're like, okay, yeah, maybe we'll get divorced, but no, we're in love.
It would have to be a more substantial problem that was really based in the now, as opposed to 10 years from now, there might be this problem. I'd be like, well, 10 years from now, I might be hit by a bus. What else is your point?
10 years from now, a comet might hit the Earth. We don't know. But anyway, they're going to talk about it. The geniuses at the Tim Pool show.
It's no fault divorce then, yes. Right? Like, yes. So I can understand kind of like what you both are saying, like, and I as well, like I don't have a
Hang on, let's see if that
prenup. I wouldn't want to be, enter into marriage that way. But I can also understand where, for a man or a woman that had built up a lot of wealth and we're now getting into this, legal contract that's, supposed to represent a spiritual commitment, but then we're making it a legal contract. And part of that legal...
Well, see, now you actually hit something there on the head because she said spiritual commitment. That's not how everybody views it. Plus, the interesting thing she said is too is if you're a man with money, well, what if you're a woman with a lot of money and you're marrying a man that doesn't have a lot of money? You're in the same boat. Doesn't matter that you don't have a
Right.
penis, right? You're in the same boat. And yeah, it's a legal issue. And yeah, but at that point, it's like if I'm really wealthy and I'm going to marry somebody who's not, right? We're going to have a conversation. And I'm going to tell them, yeah, there's going to be a prenup. And if that's a deal breaker, that's a deal breaker. But I have to protect myself legally, right? In that situation. I mean, and if you want to do it without a prenup, that's your thing. But I don't think a lot of rich guys are going around going, well, I really want to get married, but my money, and I don't want to make her sign a prenup, so I guess the relationship's over. No, they're going to say this is what it's going to be. I don't think there are a lot of rich guys that have that problem, or rich women that have that problem that they can't get a fucking attorney.
Right.
So this is kind of a nonsense thing. And then the spiritual aspect, it's like, okay, ideally marriage is about love, but initially a marriage was not about love, it was about property. Because you can be in love with somebody and live with them and not be married. That's what they're overlooking.
Contract isn't structured around a lifelong agreement like it used to be because we got rid of because now we have no fault divorce. So I can understand getting rid of no fault divorce.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, and I think also,
and sorry,
sure.
just
No,
the courts are heavily biased in favor of women.
Yeah.
That's bullshit. That used to be true for custody back in the 70s and the 80s, but that changed quite a bit in the 90s. So now they look at what is best for the child. So fathers who do want custody win about half the time. Now, typically, women get custody, but that's because in a lot of cases, fathers don't want full custody. So they don't really fight for full custody. And the interesting thing about that, and I wish I had pulled up the study. I'll try and find the study and I'll add it to a link to this. But the group of men that least fight for custody are white men in the South. You know what the group that fights for custody the most? Black men. And they're the ones saying, well, all these black guys aren't fathers and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, no. A lot of these black guys are fathers and they're there for their kids. They're just not married. Because it's too expensive or they don't want to get married. But they have custody of their kids or partial custody. I thought that was interesting. I didn't, because you hear them say that all the time about black people being shitty parents. And it's like, nope, it's mostly white people. I was kind of shocked.
Now, one thing that's curious about, the statistic about men not necessarily fighting for full custody, it makes me wonder, and I don't know that there's any way for us to know this, but it makes me wonder how much of that has to do with some of the psychology of what happened in the 70s and 80s, so much with it just automatically being something that women would be granted unless somehow they were shown unfit.
Well, I know. I think
it kind of makes me wonder if there's something of the psychology of that makes men go, well, maybe I'll go for joint custody because they just don't necessarily think that they would get full custody.
No, I don't think it was just the 70s and the 80s. I think that's just sort of historical, but especially European values. And in fact, in a lot of countries where it was women give birth, women raise the children. That was the expectation. And it's just been sort of a cultural expectation that's permeated. I don't think it's anything that happened specifically in the 70s and the 80s. I think it's just in general that's the expectation. And so there are a lot of guys who are like, I don't want to raise the kids. I'm a man, I want to go work and do these things, or I'm an alpha. Guys like these who were, I'm the male, I shouldn't have to do this shit. Guys like Steven Crowder, do your wifely duties, go get my groceries. Right.
People who
have sexual expectations based on gender.
Right, who are really married to these sort of traditional gender roles.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to, nowadays a lot of times fathers do get custody because sometimes the mothers just don't, are checked out, or they don't want it, right? Or the father makes more money or is in a better position to take care of the kid. But that's been the trend to more towards it's more equal since the 80s. But that's, so this idea that women get advantages in divorce court, that was the only real advantage they got. Now, the reason he can say, well, women get more advantages if they get more financially is because traditionally women have been the housewife or made less money in those more traditional relationships. That's not so much true anymore because more women graduate from college and women are starting to make more money than men over the last 20 years, just in general, which might be part of why these guys have a hard time getting married because it's like all the eligible women make more money than you. And it's emasculating and you don't want to, and it's a deal breaker. That could be an issue. But they don't want to look at it like that, right? They're going back to, they want it to be traditional. But the bottom line is that's not how it is anymore. And so if you're in a relationship and the woman makes more money, like I said, you're the breadwinner, you make more money, but I have more free time and we get divorced, well, I probably get the kids because I can spend more time with the kids. And you'd probably agree to it because I've already spent more time with the kids. And you can provide more that way. You see? So this idea that once again, the way it's split is it's not leaning towards women, it's leaning towards who the less wealthier party in the marriage was, which
Right.
traditionally has been women, but now it's balancing out a little bit more. So that's a whole bullshit thing because they're trying to make it into this, it's a sexual or a sex thing, or women get all the advantages, or it's unfair to men. When it's like, no, it's just that the bar has shifted, right?
Right.
It was unfair when you guys had all the advantages and whatnot, but now that it's sort of flipping back the other way, now it's becoming more fair, and now you're still bitching about it like you were getting the shaft. I mean, so that's what all that was.
Same degree, especially with children
Oh.
and
Well, it's funny because we live in this culture where no fault divorce is the law of the land. And people will say things like, well, look how often marriage ends in divorce. How could you ever be in favor of social structures which disincentivize that or would, dissuade people from getting divorced? But I think what people often miss is if young folks know they're in an environment where divorce is not an option, I firmly believe they're going to be more careful about who they choose to marry. And I think also people are going to be more careful about their decision making in general when it comes to sexuality. A lot of people will start sleeping with someone, and as you've mentioned, that releases oxytocin and other hormones that bond you. And there are a lot of couples that end up together because they're sexually engaging with one another and they're bonding, but they're not actually really good for each other. And then at some point,
Okay, so I'm not sure where he's entirely going with that, but this idea that you're going to be more careful about who you marry if you know divorce isn't an option. Well, no, I would think that you wouldn't get married at all. Because if divorce isn't an option, why the fuck would you take that risk?
Yeah, honestly, I'm going to be honest. I'm somebody who has always been reluctant about the idea of marriage, and I have not ever been married.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always been sort of reluctant. And if I knew I could literally never opt out, there would be no chance at all anybody would get me down an aisle.
No. No, that's my point.
I'd be like, what, are you kidding? I can never get out. I literally would have to be in this until I was dead. I mean, my intention, if I should ever get married, would be to stay in that marriage. That would be very much my intention.
Well, the intention, yeah. But my whole thing is look, if you're like, because I've been engaged. It didn't work out, but I've been engaged. And it was like, my whole thought was, look, if it doesn't work out, I can always get divorced. Right? That's the only reason I would even go that far, is because there's an out at the end.
I mean, think about it. What if the first job you ever took was the one that you had to be in until you died, what would you be doing for a living?
Nothing. I'd be working for myself doing something.
The first job I ever took was actually at a summer camp. It was a lot of fun, but work at a summer camp until I died? Okay, so why is it, that sounds super absurd, but like, why would you want the first anything you ever did to be something you had to do until you died? The first job you ever have might be the perfect one. The first marriage you ever have might be the perfect one. I hope everybody has that life.
Sure.
The first house you buy is the perfect one.
Right. My whole thing is, I like, as a finance person, that there's an out. I like to be able to correct a mistake. Because you don't know going in. And I mean, they might be sweet and nice and all that, but then once you're married, it's a nightmare. You don't know. I like to have the options. And that's the key thing here, kids, is with divorce and all this stuff that we're talking about, it's what are the different options? And we're trying to look at what the best solutions are. But the idea is you need to maximize your options if you want to be successful and happy in life. And the way you do that is not closing yourself off.
I would argue that knowing that you don't have to stay in a marriage has the ability to potentially make it better, because you know that you're there by choice
And not by force.
You know that if there are issues that you are choosing to try to work out together, that you are doing that by choice.
Right.
That's, to me, that seems to have the possibility of making the relationship stronger, not
weaker.
Right. Exactly. Because quite frankly, if you have no choice but to stay in a thing or whatnot, like, you're going to work on the issues? I don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I can't get out anyway. Meh.
Yeah. Well, let's watch a little bit more of this real quick, and then
point in the marriage, when the novelty of that person wears off, they get divorced. So I think it's not just that we have no fault divorce in people who would otherwise be.
Let's just skip ahead a little
We were
bit.
talking about this the other day, that we're citing Jordan Peterson so often in this.
Yes.
He was saying something that after 35, you better have a family, because that's when things start to break down. That's what the conversation.
Oh, boo. Okay, I'm done with it. This is the point.
Yeah, this is icky. I don't want to watch this anymore.
So the after 35 thing, that was the Jordan Peterson. That was for women, because women, once you're 35, you're never going to find a man because you're past your prime. That was that whole spiel. So it's sexist shit at that point. So anyway, so that was kind of our whole spiel with the divorce stuff.